Let's go over some tips when writing your summative assignment. Number 1. Always make time to proofread your work. This will help eliminate basic typos and spelling errors. Try to avoid writing your summative assignment the night before, as this will limit the opportunity to proofread. Next, try to ensure that you use accurate references throughout. Try to avoid unevidenced claims. So, for example, if you say this theory is, show where you read this with a reference. So, by the same token, try to avoid using anecdotal evidence. Next, try to use authoritative and credible academic sources. Thus, avoid overusing information gleaned from non-academic websites and sources. Next, in your response, try to provide a clear argument. So, try to avoid including irrelevant information. Many students use what we might describe as a scattergun approach to responses. That means they try to include everything they know within their response. Try to instead include information that is directly relevant to the question that you are responding to. Try to make sure that you explain the relevance of the information selected. If the information selected is not relevant, then try not to include it. Lastly, try to keep your sentences concise. Stick to 1 or 2 points per sentence. This will help with clarity of argument. So, try to avoid convoluted sentences. Words like however and therefore in the middle of a sentence are usually a good indicator for when to start a new sentence. Okay, now we've covered our tips, let's look at the questions in part 3 in more detail. Here in front of you are the 6 questions that are found in part 3 of the summative assignment. It is important to note that in each question you are being asked to demonstrate a number of different things. Let us explore them now in more detail. Question 1 asks, what is ontology? What is the ontological status of your research area, and how has this influenced the research paradigm that you have chosen for your research project? So, it is asking you to do 3 things. To explain what is ontology, to explain to the reader what is the ontological status of your research, and then to show how this has influenced the research paradigm you have chosen. This last point, it is asking you to simply state the chosen research paradigm and not go into detail of it here. Question 2 asks you, what are research paradigms? What is the research paradigm you have chosen and why? And how has this influenced the research design that you have chosen for your research project? Similarly to question 1, it is asking you to do 3 things. First, explain what are research paradigms. Then to explain to the reader what is the research paradigm you have chosen and why. And lastly, to show how this has influenced the research design that you have chosen. Similarly to question 1, the last part of the question is answered by simply stating the chosen research design that you have chosen. Question 3 asks, what are research designs? What is the research design you have chosen and why? And how has this influenced the methods that you have chosen for your research project? And again, the question is asking you to do 3 things. Firstly, state what are research designs and explain them to the reader. Then to explain what is the research design that you have chosen and why. And then lastly, to show how this has influenced the methods that you have chosen for your research project, simply by stating the chosen methods. Question 4 asks, what research methods have you chosen and why? What are the key validity debates that accompany data of this nature, and what strategies will you employ to overcome them? Again, this is asking you to demonstrate 3 things. It's asking you to demonstrate knowledge of what research methods you have chosen and why. What are the key validity debates that accompany the chosen data? And what strategies employ to overcome these validity shortcomings? Question 5 asks, what sampling techniques have you used? Who will your sample consist of and why? Thus, the question is asking you to discuss and explain what sampling techniques you have used and to talk about who your sample will consist of and why you have specifically chosen this sample. Finally, question 6 asks you, what are the ethical debates and issues around conducting the type of research project that you propose, and what steps will you, as the researcher, take to overcome them? So, this question is split into two. Firstly, it's asking you to discuss what are the key ethical debates around this type of research, and importantly, what steps has the researcher taken to overcome these ethical concerns? Okay, so those are the 6 questions in part 3 of the summative assignment. Remember that parts 1 and 2 are not included in your word count, and so the 3,000 words relates directly to these 6 questions. Let's now finish by looking at and grading a sample response to question 1 in section 3. Go to the sample grading activity in the Wolf folder and complete. Once you have completed the activity, go to the next part of this screencast.